Hi, I'm LoLo Roberts. I'm a practicing gratitude girl that strives every day and every way to recognize and celebrate my blessings. God is the center of my life, and His love allows me to live life to the fullest. Every day is a day of growth and self-improvement. I am blessed to have you join me on this podcast. Love, peace, and gratitude.
All right, it is another edition of Grateful Gratitude with LoLo, and I'm very, very excited about this episode because we tried this once before, LoLo.
Yes, we did. I'm thrilled to say that I have my daughter Lexie in the studio today, and she is actually going to tell an amazing story about her father.
Well, thank you. Yeah, so I'm going to keep it short, so I won't go into too much detail, but my mom, LoLo, was a single mom, I think for 8 years. It was just us two, but we lived in Illinois before living in Texas, and my father didn't know how to be a dad. That's how I look at it now. But as a child, it was really hard. I'm an only child, so, I didn't have any other siblings to kind of figure out how to handle things, and I still struggle with that today. I guess the best way to put it was our relationship, it was kind of cancerous in the fact that he just dealt with a lot of issues and vices that he had, but, he was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and as a child, being aware of that at only 6 years old and not being shocked that my parents got a divorce and understanding that my dad was cheating on my mom because I would run into the lady that he was cheating on my mom with because of the small town we lived in. It was just not good, and it made me have to mature really early on, which also gave me a very, very scared outlook on the world, kind of. I was just kind of scared of everything growing up. But anyways, so we moved to Texas, and let's see, I didn't talk to my dad for 10 years, I think it was. I've never heard of him or anything. We moved when I was 8, and as a kid, we were just starting to have computers and stuff, and I remember I would go and search online his name and try to find a phone number, but I was always told he didn't pay his bills, so he didn't have a phone, and I was in touch with his dad and my grandpa or whatever before he died, and he would just tell me, he doesn't have a phone, he doesn't have a way to contact anyone, and so it just bothered me for so long because I wanted that fatherly figure of my biological dad to be in my life. And so after all of that, my senior year in high school, I got a random phone call in the middle of drill team practice from an Illinois number, and anytime I got a phone call from an Illinois number that was an unknown number, I would always, pray it would be my dad. And I didn't answer it, and I had this weird feeling, and I had a voicemail, and it was him, and it was the weirdest thing, and it was just weird. And I broke down crying, and I was so happy, and I called him back, and I talked to him on the phone for a couple hours and just pretty much not really talking about anything, but just I was bawling my eyes out, and he just kept saying, I'm sorry, I love you, you're all I have, and all he would tell me is I was all he had. Nobody loved him, and so I was the only person in his life, instilling a huge guilt on me. And so he got back into drugs and alcohol after that. We reunited in Illinois, and I got to see him again, and it just was weird and uncomfortable. But since then, he would keep in touch, or he would try to call me or text me and, leave me 15 voicemails if I didn't answer and get mad at me and kind of blame me for his issues, and I took on that blame. But anyways, so it was very, very, very not good for my well-being to have to talk to him in my life at the time. And the last time I talked to him was in 2015. I had gotten engaged in May, and then in June, it was Father's Day, and it was 10 in the morning. I mean, it wasn't even in the afternoon, and I honestly wasn't planning on saying anything to him just because we hadn't talked in 8 months since he had been in the hospital for trying to drink himself to death at the time. And he just called me and left me a whole bunch of voicemails and said, I hope you're wishing your stepdad a happy Father's Day since you've loved him and don't love me, just this whole guilt thing. And that was the first time I ever got angry at him. ever. And I stood up for myself, and I called him out on everything, and stood up for my stepfather because he was the one that was always there for me and supported me. And I just called him out, and that was the last time I talked to him. And he hadn't reached out since then. And so this summer I was pregnant, and it was September 11th, and I got another phone call from Illinois, and I just had a feeling. I knew this was going to happen eventually, and it freaked me out, and I ran upstairs to my husband, and I was like, answer this. I can't mentally deal with this right now. I don't even know what's going on, but I just don't want to answer. And at that time, I was praying it wasn't my dad, and it wasn't my dad. It was his girlfriend at the time, and she called, and my husband answered, and all my husband was saying was, Lexie can't come to the phone right now. She's upset. She can't come to the phone. You need to tell me what's going on. And she insisted that she wouldn't anyway. So I got on the phone and put it on speaker, and she told me that the apartment complex had found my dad. He had died. And it was just so hard at the time. I was really sick in my pregnancy, so it was just something I couldn't take at the time. And this was like rock bottom for me. I don't know, it hurt so bad. And I was an only child, so I didn't have anybody else to talk to about. I could talk to people about it, but it was, I didn't have a sibling to go to or anyone to look to for that part. I was going to counseling at the time, and I had my mom, but I was next of kin, and that made it really hard. So anytime anybody had to reach out about something regarding him, they had to come to me, which I wasn't prepared to be able to handle at the time. Anyways, so long story short, once he died, I thought, it was really hard at first for a few days. And I actually went to my next counseling appointment, and I explained that I had this sense of relief, which sounds crazy, but it was almost like I was anticipating this to happen for so long that now that it happened, I knew he was in a better place, and I could finally have closure. And I was happy with that, and I kept positive about it, and I had peace with it, and I prayed about it, and I really did make peace with it. And then a month later, I got a message from a lady in Illinois, and she just said, I just want to let you know I need to talk to you. You're next of kin. I've searched everywhere for you since you're married and have a different name and all that, and I need to talk to you about your dad's funds or something. And I didn't know any better. I figured it was a bill or something like that. And so I put off calling her, and I didn't want to call. And finally, I was in the car with my mom right before a networking event, and I was like, okay, I'm going to call, and I'm going to put it on speakerphone because I just can't handle anything by myself. And my mom's like, okay. So I ended up calling. I didn't put it on speaker, but it turns out he had left me a pretty big sum of money. And this was at a time where my husband and we were renting, and we didn't want to rent anymore, and I was working part-time, but with being sick and everything, and I was planning to stay home and everything, we just couldn't afford a down payment for a house. And never did I ever think this would, he never had money. Like I said, he didn't even pay his own bills and didn't pay child support, and he spent it all on drugs and alcohol. And so with that money, we were able to put a down payment on our first home, and that was a huge deal for me and my husband, and it gave us a sense of relief because, in the first year of marriage, it's tough when it comes to financial stuff. So anyways, pretty much it just came full circle with our relationship. He didn't know how to be a father here on earth, but as soon as he went to heaven, he became that father in that way. And it's crazy how, God makes things work out, and never would I ever expected that, and nobody else that knew my situation would ever have thought. That was it was like winning the lottery in the sense, the odds were not in that favor. But it just really shows, because in the deep pit of that situation, I did not know how I was going to get out of it, and I figured this pain was going to stay with me forever, and it made me way stronger and grow up even more. So that's that story. Thanks for having me.
And you may hear in the background here
my son, my 4-month-old.
What a great story, though.
Thank you.
You do a very good job explaining how, a situation that was bad is something that you ended up very grateful for.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you. I was trying not to ramble.